Four pugs. So, here we are today with Milo, and we're continuing Awful Archaeology. This is episode 4, Creationist Footprint Conspiracies. Okay, now look. I don't really know what to make of a lot of these things that pop up. I really don't. Some of these I've never even heard of, and then it makes my head hurt when I hear the rationale that goes into them. But I think I might have heard something about this with them seeing larger than average footprints, and immediately assuming that this must be the giants that were spoken about in Genesis and things of that nature. I got a feeling that's what he's going to be talking about here. I never really looked much into it because the sheer fact of the matter was, I saw it, I assumed there had to be something else other than the fact that a 12-foot tall being made them, and I dismissed them out of hand. The sheer fact of the matter is, people will look for answers, but they'll look for answers kind of in the worst way possible half the time. It's one of those things where you just sit there and you look at it and you're just like, why do people get involved in this kind of stuff? And then at the same time, there is a great general distrust of academia and things like that that seems to rear its ugly head at the worst possible points. And frankly, I don't know why half the time. I really don't. Guys, Milo's links are going to be in the description down below. Please go check out his video. The link is in the description down below. Subscribe to him if you haven't already. If you've never seen Milo, you're in for kind of a... I enjoy this. I really do. I like listening to stories, both ridiculous and, I like listening to pretty much... How am I going to phrase this? I like it when I'm listening to something and I can basically learn something, but at the same time kind of guard myself against falling into traps. You know, for a long time now, I've told people, don't just immediately jump on the bandwagon for things. Don't just immediately do that, because you always, more often than not, wind up with egg on your face at the end of the day. And me personally, I just don't want that to happen to me. I've had it happen a couple of times in my life, and frankly, I'm not in the mood for it again. So whenever I see something come out and there's some sort of incredible claim about it, I always want to sit back and just wait. And I find that if you just sit back and wait, you know, you might not be the one that got there first, but you will be the one that basically was just like, okay, you know, at least I sat there and gave it a bit of time to stew and settle, and for people to sit there and actually look at it and debate. Guys, Milo is frankly one of my favorite people on this platform, and I wish I could do what he does for a living, but sadly not for me. I'm fat, and I'm not sure what that has to do with anything, but you get it. Let's jump right into this. Awful Archaeology, Episode 4, Creationist Footprint English. Let's go.
When you think of creationism, what do you think of? My hair is in my face. Do you think
There
of
you
Adam
go.
and Eve in the Garden of Eden? Do you think of God creating Earth and all of its creatures in just a handful of days? Do you think of that one relative who uses every family event as a platform to try and convert you? Or do you think of feet? How do you like that for a hook? That's called audience retention. It's very important. Last week, the Wheel of
This is called engagement.
Pain decided that I would be talking about the Fisher Canyon footprints. This is a location which is cited by some creationists and conspiracy theorists as evidence that humans have been on the Earth for the past 200 million years. But
Huh?
as I was doing research for this video, I came to a horrifying realization that this is far from the only example of creationist foot conspiracies.
Oh boy.
And because I only have so much patience and I value your sanity, I've decided that I am going to just try and kill 3 birds with 1 stone.
Sweet.
So ladies and gentlemen, it is both my great pleasure and great shame to present to you this episode are some fossilized footprints, or what some claim to be fossilized footprints, that are instances of out-of-place artifacts. An out-of-place artifact, or an UPA, as it is comedically shortened to, is an instance of something which conspiracy theorists and creationists will use to back up the idea that humans have been on Earth for far longer than science has told you. For those of you that have been with me since TikTok, you will know that I've covered many of these before. Things like the London Hammer and the Clute Bowl and a bunch of other stupid shit. These out-of-place artifacts are used by a very specific demographic of people, and my favorite demographic of people on the entire planet. You know them, you love them, they're young Earth creationists. Now, before I get started, it is important to mention...
What is a young Earth creationist? I'm almost horrified to learn the answer to this, because I thought he was talking a much different kind of creationist. I think my brain's going to explode by the end of this. Guys, stick with me.
Mention that I am talking specifically about young Earth creationism in this video. I'm not just talking about creationism in general, or religion in general, because lumping all of those groups of people together would be pretty horrible to do, wouldn't it? Think before you post that comment. So as we get started, I think it's important to define what young Earth creationism actually is.
Sweet.
Young Earth creationists are a group of people who will use the Bible in its literal interpretation, and they believe that the Earth and all of the creatures on it were created in their present form by God no more than 10,000 years ago. Now, some of you may be thinking, but how do people think that? We have so much evidence to prove that the Earth is far older than 10,000 years. Well, what you won't be shocked to know is that young Earth creationists are in a minority. But what you will be shocked to know is that that minority was 38% of Americans in 2017. But 2017 was a while ago, so let's look at a more recent study. In an article from 2019, that demographic has actually changed, and it's 40% now. Do you guys like my, power cord? It's held together entirely by electrical tape.
And hope. And a lot of copium. I'm not gonna say that I don't do this.
There's like 4 more electrical tape spots as you go closer to the wall. And there are countless publications, websites, and radio shows that are dedicated to this way of thinking. For example, we have this, which is the Creation Museum website, which has on the side this incredible little piece that just says, "Did humans live with dinosaurs?" As if it was some sort of rhetorical question. 65 million years ago, a giant asteroid entered the Earth's atmosphere. Or did it? That's good, I like that. And then underneath there's ticket options, so if you're engaged by that really deceiving hook, you can give them money. Then it has a picture of an ankylosaurus walking through a woods, which I'm a big fan of. That's a pretty good looking guy. Yeah. And then if you scroll down a little bit, you're greeted with what appears to be a child gleefully being chased by a velociraptor. If you
I don't have a problem with people who, you know, I don't have a problem with religious people who have, you know, views that I don't particularly agree with. You know, I don't particularly agree with, like, at all. Just okay.
Get curious enough that you scroll down looking for answers, you are met with an unfalsifiable hypothesis. Think about it. Were you there when God created the Earth? No. It answers its own question. How do you know I wasn't there? Now, I may be laughing, but I think I'm being a little bit too harsh, because saying, "were you there," actually is a really good point. Because there was this one time where I caught a fish that was this big. One of my favorite creationists is none other than Ken Ham. He is a staunch evolution denier, which is very weird coming from a man who spent his younger years looking like a Neanderthal. And he's also responsible for building this, which some of you may recognize as the Ark Encounter from Kentucky. It is pretty much a gigantic creationist theme park that is built inside of a replica of Noah's Ark built to all of the specifications from the Bible. I think this is one of the most American things I've ever seen in my entire life. Ken Ham also took it as a personal attack that Canada outlawed conversion therapy, because, you know, nothing says "I love all God's children" quite like trying to make some of them hate the way they were born. Really on the right side of history there, Ken Ham. But actually, this elderly neckbeard is one of the LGBTQ plus community's greatest allies, because he went above and beyond and lit up the Ark Encounter, his very own creationist museum, with the pride flag. You know, I heard some rumor somewhere that he did it to take back God's colors, but we all know that that's horribly offensive, insensitive, and homophobic, so he obviously couldn't have been saying that and we're just putting words in his mouth. Seeing a a creationist museum lit up with the colors that the entire world views as the pride colors is probably the most glorious thing I've seen in my entire life. You really thought you did something there, Ken Ham. Oh, and the slogan for the Ark Encounter is, "It's bigger than imagination," which, at the risk of making too many jokes in one sentence, sounds like you're projecting a little. All right, that's enough time spent talking about Ken Ham and his homoerotic
let's
abode.
go.
By and large, the young Earth conspiracy. That's funny. By and large, the young Earth creationist rhetoric is more or less consistent. It consistently makes up its own evidence, and then that evidence consistently falls apart. So I guess without further ado, why don't we get started? Thanks, Milo. We're actually getting to the episode now. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to present to you The Fisher Canyon prints are a fairly infamous example of these creationist footprints. This discovery has been used in publications like God or Gorilla by Alfred Watson McCann in 1922, or if we want to call it by its full name, God or Gorilla, How the Monkey Theory of Evolution Exposes Its Own Methods, Refutes Its Own Principles, Denies Its Own Inferences, Disproves Its Own Case by Alfred Watson McCann. Oh, it's Watterson, not Watson. Oh wait, I don't care. I don't know why they didn't just go with God or Gorilla. That's like almost a snappy title. Why'd they have to add all the other shit? And if you go to just like the second or third page of this creationist book from the 1920s, you are met with one of the greatest dedications ever written. Because this book is dedicated to all lovers of truth. I'm telling you, these jokes just write themselves. This book also has a picture of a skeleton of an orangutan, which is labeled as the skeleton of a chimpanzee. So there's that. The Fisher Canyon prints were also discussed in the 1975 book.
They tried to say that was a...
Views on creation, evolution, and fossil man. But this book pretty much just parrots everything that Alfred, lover of truth, McCann says in his. Sorry, I mean Alfred doesn't know what an orangutan is, McCann says in his book. The only difference is that the 1975 book claims that the Fisher Canyon print was analyzed under a microscope, proving that the print shows evidence of stitching in the sole of the shoe. However, it shows none of these pictures, and there's no evidence that it was ever analyzed under a microscope, so this is wrong. The Fisher Canyon prints were found, obviously, in Fisher Canyon. Located in Pershing County, Nevada, this location has a 1-star review on Google Maps. And judging by what but that review says, it was probably written by the same person who would play the Soviet national anthem bass boosted in the back of your bus and think he was fucking hilarious. I would also give it a 1-star review, but that's because it's not a canyon and this is just false advertising. But I'd expect nothing less from a state whose main attraction is a theme park city named after the Spanish word for the meadows and not the Spanish word for giant pile of broken glass and syphilis. There are a few different stories as to how this print was found. One of these accounts is that it was discovered by amateur geologist John T. Reed in 1922. I like the term amateur geologists. It's just like somebody who likes rocks. Interestingly, this is actually the same...
I'm an amateur geologist. I like rocks.
Same guy who excavated Lovelock Cave in 1912, which is something I'll probably have to talk about eventually, because you can't talk about pseudo-archaeology without talking about that one, unfortunately. But in doing
my brain is gonna explode. Like, why?
Research for this video, I found that it is far more likely the discovery was made by Albert. I've said Alfred about 6 times trying to film this. Alfred Knapp.
There you go.
Albert Knapp. Albert Knapp in 1917. He worked for the Nevada Mining Co., which would make sense because it was mining in Nevada.
Right.
So that would check out. The first public information on the find is from March 18th of 1922, and it's actually from the New York Times of all places. There is then another article from October 8th of 1922 from the New York Sunday American. It's called The Mystery of the Petrified Shoe Sole, and it was published by a man named Baloo, which I think that Baloo and the Mystery of the Petrified Shoe is a fantastic name for a children's book for any of you who would be interested in writing such a thing.
I think I might take the bird, the bean, and do a children's book. That might actually be a lot of fun, I'm just saying.
Once was a man named Baloo. He found a petrified shoe.
Yay.
You guys can finish that limerick in the comments. This is a quote from the Sunday American article discussing the discovery. Some time ago, while he was prospecting for fossils in Nevada, John T. Reed, a distinguished mining engineer and geologist, stopped suddenly and looked down in utter bewilderment and amazement at a rock near his feet. I don't know why this article says that Reed found it, because he didn't, but whatever. But it does say that he's a distinguished mining engineer and geologist and not a guy who likes rocks, so I guess that's an improvement. I'm
a rocket scientist because I can shake up a Mountain Dew and put it on its nozzle and just watch it fly.
There, a part of the rock itself was what seemed to be a human footprint.
Oh.
Upon closer inspection, it was shown that it was not the mark of a naked foot, but was apparently a shoe sole which had turned into stone.
Okay.
The forepart was missing, we'll get into that, but there was the outline of at least 2/3 of it, and around the outline ran a well-defined sewn thread which had, it appeared, attached the welt to the sole. My great-uncle was a cobbler, but I did not inherit any of the language, so I don't really know what a welt is. Well, I do know what a welt is, but that's only because I've stood too close to a pitchback. Further on was another line of sewing. Oh my god, this guy uses so many commas. Further on was another line of sewing, comma, and in the center, comma, where the foot would have rested had the object really been a shoe sole, comma, there was an indentation, comma, exactly such as would have been made by the bone of the heel rubbing upon and wearing down the material of which the sole had been made, period.
That was a run-on sentence and a half. I think I just finished a marathon. Let's go.
I wonder if he was getting paid by the word. Thus was found a fossil which is the foremost mystery of science today. No, it isn't. For the rock in which it was found is at least 5 million years old. The guy who wrote this article doesn't really seem to know what's going on because he accredits the wrong person to finding it and then claims that the stone is 5 million years old, which 5 million years would only date it to the middle of the Pliocene, which is not the case. This rock is actually from the Triassic, making it about 210 million years old. Now, of course, young Earth creationists who have found this print and found that they can fit it into their box of belief will just negate the fact that this rock is really old and claim that it's 10,000 years old. Because it's a lot easier to shape facts around your beliefs than shape your beliefs around the facts. So what is this footprint? Because we all know that people did not exist that long ago.
Right.
Again, for those of you who followed me on TikTok, you're already going to recognize the solution that I have to what this artifact is. This is an ironstone concretion. A concretion is a sedimentary feature in which pieces of sediment will adhere to a harder node within the sedimentary strata. Sometimes it'll be a small pebble, sometimes just a dense clump of sediment. It can be leaves, it can be fossils, it can be a whole host of different things. And as the sediment will adhere to it, it'll create this really hard piece of stone within the relatively uniform sedimentary rock around it. They can be very easily mistaken for fossil. I myself have picked them up thinking that they're seashells or coral, and then found out that they were just a rock and got horribly depressed. And
that's a rock!
Of course, for those of you that watched my first video on YouTube, there are some people who think the concretions are the remains of windows from melted buildings. An important piece to note about this, which Baloo actually brings up in his article quote that I just read, is that it's broken in half. We don't know what the tip of the shoe sole actually looked like. So the way that the inference was made that this looks like a shoe sole is because someone saw that, related it to something in their own life, and was just like, I can just infer the rest and make it fit whatever I want it to fit.
The ability of people to see patterns in static is a known thing. I don't know the exact word for it, but it is a proven fact that we automatically look for patterns of things that we recognize. So I don't know why that looked like a soul to him. I really don't know why it looks like a soul to anybody else. To me, I'm not sure what I'm looking at there, but I'm not seeing a soul. I'm just seeing a weird line in a rock.
There's a list of other shapes that the concretion could have had, none of which look like a shoe. Again, that is just adding your own externalities into a piece of evidence in order to make it say whatever you want it to say. And the banding here, which they say is the stitching in the bottom of a shoe, is something which is actually indicative of an ironstone concretion. These features are actually called Liesgang rings, and they are what happens when water will seep into the rock, oxidize the iron which is inside of it, and create these kind of concentric circles that are a reddish color. So what these people found...
That is so cool. Okay, seriously, that is just... is
not evidence that man walked the earth 2 million years ago. What it is a half-interesting example of geology and an opportunity for me to teach you about concretions.
Sweet.
Good night and God bless. All right, let's move on.
Let's go. I've never heard of this stuff before. I've never heard of these footprint threes. I just haven't. Let's go.
You got a headache yet?
Yeah.
Yes? Good, because we're moving on. Let's talk about the Jackson County footprints.
Sweet.
In the 1880s, a wagon train rode through Jackson County, Kentucky, a state which I don't think I've made a joke about yet, but I don't have to, because the joke is itself. The wagon train...
Don't diss Kentucky. Don't diss Kentucky. Kentucky Fried Chicken comes from there. I will take that as a mortal offense.
Rode near the town of what is now Morill, or Morill. or some other thing. I don't know. Phonetics evade me. And in 1885, Professor F.J. Brown of Brea College found footprints which were located along this wagon train.
Okay.
Again, I don't know if this is Brea College, I could not tell you. Kentucky seems to have just centralized all of the things that are not pronounced phonetically. Where stone had been chipped away by the wagon wheels, it had revealed the remains of stone that dated back 360 million years to the middle of the Carboniferous period. And in this newly exposed stone, the professor found the remains of footprints from bears, horses, and humans. I'm going to say that for you one more time, and I'm going to let you figure out what's wrong with it. They found the remains of footprints from bears, horses, and humans.
What's your point, Milo? My brain just shorted out, honestly. Let's go.
Congratulations, you figured it out. None of those three things existed 360 million years ago. Let's talk about bears first, because they're adorable, and why would I not talk about bears?
Of course.
Did you know that bears are the youngest of all carnivore families? Yeah? Good for you, that's awesome. Bears arose during the Eocene, which was about 40 to 55 million years ago.
Don't you want to just pet them?
Which, yeah, it's a really long time ago, but it also wasn't all that long ago in the scale of geologic time. For example, the Earth looked like this, which looks more or less like what it is today.
I have said if you took a look at the map, of the world when the ice caps were not a thing, you would struggle to, you would be able to pick out certain things, but the world was so radically different. Same thing when the glacial maximum was in place. The world, you would be able to recognize many key features, but it would look so radically different. This is I know that during the glacial maximum, the continental shelves were exposed up to about 400 feet down in the modern day sea levels. It was 400 feet below that. I can't remember exactly how far down it got, as how far the waters rose when the planet was basically too hot for the ice caps, but somebody tell me in the comment section below if he doesn't mention it, because now my brain is doing a backflip.
It kind of looks like what would happen if you told someone to draw a map of the Earth from memory after they did a keg stand. And bears didn't even spread into Eurasia and the rest of the world until about 5 million years ago, meaning that they only had a little bit of a head start on humans, with our oldest ancestors like Ardipithecus arising 5.6 million years ago. And because of this, most evidence of ancient bears is fairly recent.
Center to Chicago. The bears.
This bear tooth, which they found in Canada, which is dated to be about 3.5 million years old. And what's even better is that this bear tooth has a cavity, because this bear was a little guy, and he wanted to eat sweet things. Which I think is great. I'll give him a little pat on the head.
I will not. You go ahead, Milo. I don't mess with bears.
And tell him he's doing a great job, but also tell him to brush his teeth, because dental hygiene is very important. Okay, now horses. The earliest ancestor of horses arose around 60 million years ago. Their oldest known ancestor is this monstrosity, known as a Hyracotherium. I bet some scientists thought they were being really intelligent by naming it something which translates to the dawn horse, but it doesn't matter to me because I am going to call it stupid dumbass. It is actually the very first member of the family Equidae, which is the family that horses are in. But it is also proof that being first in something does not always mean that you won. Remains of this strange rat horse have been found in clay deposits in what is now southern England. 60 million years ago, this area was a lush tropical forest instead of a desolate wasteland full of people with worse dental hygiene than the bear we just talked about.
Wow.
Now, interestingly, they've also found fossils.
Look, we're not at war with them anymore. The revolution is over. I understand you're from Boston, but my God, shots fired.
Of the Hyracotherium in the eastern United States. But when they found the fossils in the eastern United States, they didn't know that they had also found fossils in England, so they ended up naming the fossils in the United States an entirely different thing. The discovery in the United States was...
And this actually happened quite a bit, where similar species, and this happened a lot during the Bone Wars with Ogden and Marsh, where they would find several species. They would find things they thought were separate species of dinosaur or other animal that was now extinct, and they would declare them a whole new species, not realizing they had the same thing.
Called Eohippus, while the one in England was called Hyracotherium. And then eventually they ended up showing their fossils to one another and were like, shit, we found the same thing. And then for some reason England got to keep their name. I don't know why. Maybe they were bitter about the revolution and we thought we'd give them something. Another little piece of early horse trivia that you're never going to need in your entire life is that the anatomist Richard Owen analyzed the Eohippus fossil, I believe, and he at first thought it was some sort of monkey because of its teeth. I don't know what you're ever going to do with that information, but I think it's kind of funny. Okay, my point is that none of these animals existed during the Carboniferous period.
Yeah, pretty much there was not that much walking the earth at that time in terms of being on land that you would come close to even considering part of the animal tree today. Well, the animal tree. You get it, the animal kingdom.
So let's step back a little bit. A man found the prints of horses, bears, and humans in an area which is full of giant forested hills. Through these giant forested hills is one throughway, a wagon train in the mountains. What kind of things would frequent a wagon train? Humans, horses, and other giant animals that don't want to have to walk through the forest and would also take a path of least resistance.
Bears?
Like a bear. What Professor Brown found was not a fossil from the Carboniferous period. He just found a hardened piece of mud with footprints in it. He also never took any pictures or documented these footprints in any sort of tangible way. Though he is recorded as saying about the human prints that they were, quote, good size, toes well spread, and distinctly marked.
Just go to WikiFeet, dude. Just go to WikiFeet. It's okay.
Which sounds a lot more like something that someone that you went to high school with would comment on your Instagram pictures of you at the beach, and then you would promptly block them. These are not fossilized footprints, and they are not as old as he says they are. Take that, Bria College. I got my eye on you. Alright, let's talk about the Paluxy River footprints. I'm filming this for like the third time and I am ready to lose my mind. The Paluxy River is about 30 miles long and flows through the town of Glen Rose, Texas. Glen Rose, Texas has a Burger King next to a place called Nuclear Nutrition, which has got to be the worst advertising campaign since the Love Canal After School Water Park program or the Chernobyl graphite kicking contest.
I've seen weirder. I honestly have. I mean, if we're just taking score.
Not only does the river flow through the town of Glen Rose, it also flows through the Glen Rose Formation, which is a long limestone formation which used to be a piece of lower Cretaceous shoreline.
God, I'd love to be somewhere like this just to be able to take a look at this stuff. Oh my God. I would love to be... Okay, so here's the bad thing about me, okay? When I was younger, I had the chance, I had the time, I had the capability to go out and actually go and look at this stuff, but I never had the interest. It's only when I've gotten older that I've gotten the interest for this kind of stuff.
Today, this limestone is home to a myriad of fossils of bivalves, corals, and gastropods. And while all of those things are pretty interesting, they pale in comparison to the crown jewel of the Glen Rose Formation, which are the dinosaur footprints which can be found there. In fact, the prints are so well preserved around the town of Glen Rose that they actually opened a state park around them. The Texas State Park Committee really racked their brains to come up with a creative name for their new state park. And so they settled on calling it Dinosaur Valley State Park, which, I mean, gets to the point. You're not going to show up there and expect redwoods. Dinosaur Valley State Park is located directly along the Paluxy River. But right before the river flows through the park, it flows right through the front lawn of the Creation Evidence Museum, which is just amazing. Having a Creationist Evidence Museum a stone's throw away from a state park built around dinosaur footprints is probably the most American thing I've ever seen, right next to Ken Ham's giant gay boat. Today there are 5 locations that you can go to see the dinosaur prints at the state park. However,
one of the things that... Okay, so I'll just show you guys. That piece of rock right there, I pulled from something. I pulled from the base of a small waterfall nearby where I live. And inside of it, now, one of these days I'm going to actually take it and see if I can get a microscope. That is actually, I think, shale. And inside of it, you can actually see small things that might be fossils. I don't know. My eyes are too bad. Like I said, I haven't been able to put it underneath any kind of magnification. Seeing things like that really puts a lot of things into stark perspective for you. And I'm just a fan of expanding your horizons like that. And you can believe whatever you want to believe. I don't have an issue with that. But you really do get a sense for just how insane things have been. That stone right there, that rock, I can get up from here right now and pull the thing apart with my hands. Because that's how loose the rock fits together. And I know you can't see it, but there's several layers to that rock right there. There's several distinct layers in it. And you can actually see, like, sitting where I am, you probably can't see it from here, but there's several distinct layers in it. From thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years of sediment accrual. To be able to sit there and look back in history like that and see something like that sitting up there on that mantle is one thing. To be able to go down and walk and actually see footprints of dinosaurs would be a completely nonsensical, incredible experience. It would. We just can't fathom numbers that high. The things that put these footsteps into the ground have been dead for so long. It is incredible. I have no words for things like that. I really don't, Warbugs.
At the time of me filming this, one of those locations is closed, leading to this amazing map which has all 5 locations labeled as sites 1, 2, 4, and 5. There are tracks of both theropods and sauropods, and in one particular instance, the tracks of a young sauropod being pursued by a theropod, which is as interesting as it is sad. And because this was once a mucky lagoon shore, there's evidence of these giant dinosaurs slipping around in the mud, which is just adorable. So how were these prints found? In 1908, a flood washed down the Paluxy River and broke off an enormous piece of limestone from the shore. Underneath the limestone, there were dinosaur footprints. And while these drew the attention of people, what kept their attention was the 10 to 15 inch long man tracks that accompanied them. Which I'm glad they specified that they were man tracks, because we all know that back then, there was no women, they hadn't invented them yet. It was just men, testosterone, and Ken Ham's big gay pleasure cruise. Now some of these tracks were cut out and sold during the Great Depression.
Right.
Others of these tracks were carved, then cut out, and then sold during the Great Depression because a lot of them were fake. And they were studied in 1939 by Ronald T. Byrd, who conducted his own excavation there. Now, the discoveries of the man tracks by Ronald T. Byrd were actually supported by people like Carl Baugh. Oh, you don't know who Carl Baugh is?
Nope.
Oh, he's a young Earth creationist, and he owns the Creation Evidence Museum, which is right down the river that I just showed you. Interestingly, the Creation Evidence Museum actually has some things I've talked about before, like the London Hammer. But the last time I talked about it was on TikTok, and there was a wet-lipped British man talking about it.
Why did they find a hammer that was dated back 400 million years ago?
I automatically don't like you when you make that kind of radical claim. 400 million years? You what?
It also has the Moab skeletons, which I have not talked about before, but I'm pretty sure they're on the Wheel of Pain, so I'll unfortunately have to talk about them eventually. But Carl Baugh uses these footprints as evidence that humans coexisted with dinosaurs, which 5-year-old me would have been absolutely thrilled about, but unfortunately, I am not a 5-year-old or a creationist. So what are the man tracks? Good job, everyone who made it to the debunking portion. This is the part I do best.
Okay.
All of the prints found at the site are dinosaur prints. Not a single one of them is a human footprint, obviously. So why do they look like human footprints? Well, spoilers, they don't.
Once again, seeing patterns.
They just don't have the distinctive toes that the dinosaur tracks have. So really what you're looking at is just sort of a depression in the limestone and assuming that it's a human print. It's important to note that this is a sedimentary rock, it's very soft, and it's been exposed to flowing water for more than the last 100 years. It's also just been subject to general erosion over time, so
Right.
of course some of the prints don't look exactly like a stereotypical dinosaur footprint.
Right.
So if you can't see the toes, how do I know it's a dinosaur print? We're gonna do a little bit of at-home math here. What weighs more, a human or a theropod?
Have you seen my 600-pound life?
A theropod. Good job, you got it. So now
Aw.
explain to me why the prints of a human and the prints of a gigantic lizard would be pressed the same amount into the sediment. They wouldn't be. They wouldn't be. A human walking in this sediment would leave a very, very small footprint, while a dinosaur would leave a much deeper footprint.
True.
Now this relies on the concept that some of the tracks had the toes filled in with sediment. But amazingly, you don't even need to take my word for it, because we actually have proof that all of these tracks are dinosaur tracks.
Okay.
Glenn Cuban, who is a dinosaur footprint expert, actually did his own research at the site, and he found that most of the prints which were labeled as man tracks were just dinosaur prints that had the toes filled in with sediment. It became easier
Makes
to tell
sense.
this over time as the sediment within the toes was a slightly different makeup than the sediment around it. So over
Works.
the years it had oxidized slightly differently, meaning that the toes now kind of had a little bit of a reddish hue or a bluish hue, which helped it stand out from the more uniform limestone around it. Now this may not have been immediately apparent to the people who first found the tracks because the stone and the toes hadn't oxidized yet. That, or they just purposely left out that detail because it would suit their opinions and beliefs better.
The worst thing that you can do is take a look at a piece of evidence and automatically assume it confirms your beliefs. We have way too many people that do that nowadays. Way too many people will sit there and jump on an absolute tidal wave bandwagon without stopping 1 second to be like, could this be utter crap?
In fact, Cuban said that the evidence proving that these were dinosaur tracks and not human tracks, quote, practically jumped out at you. And this isn't even the first location where this phenomenon has been found. At the first International Conference of Dinosaur Tracks, which is a thing apparently, David Gillette claimed that he had found a very
The best a man can get.
similar thing happening to dinosaur prints in Clayton, New Mexico. Interestingly, the Paluxy River prints actually helped us understand how dinosaurs walk.
Okay.
Before this, there was some belief that dinosaurs walked on their toes. I don't know why anyone would ever believe that, but because of these prints, we learned that they actually put most of their weight on their heels, which would make sense, because every other animal does the same thing. You know I don't mean every other animal, I'm generalizing here, so you
Yeah.
don't have to point it out, appreciate
Yeah.
it. Except
Yeah.
for horses, who are constantly walking on their pinky toes, or whatever that thing is. I don't know, horse skeletons are fucking scary. There are some other indentations in the sediment.
He's not lying. If you like, there's 3 things the animal kingdom I don't really quite understand. How the horse can be that horrifying without skin, bones, and muscle. I mean, skin and muscle. And what a shaved bear looks like, because a shaved bear is a creature from your worst nightmare.
There, which are evidence of dinosaur tails dragging, or them putting their noses into the sediment to scrounge around, forage, or be giant babies. Now, Cuban, being a scientist, wanted to present his findings to a demographic that mattered. So he invited John D. Morris, a young Earth creationist, to come to the site with him to analyze his findings. Morris is the president for the Institute for Creation Research, which I don't even need to explain to you because it's exactly what it sounds like. And Morris said of the tracks, quote, "It would now be improper for creationists to use the Paluxy data as evidence against evolution. That is coming from the mouth of a creationist." Now, because I know that there's going to be a lot of people thinking about this while watching this video, we gotta talk about religion briefly. My point of this video is to prove that these discoveries do not support the idea of young Earth creationism. Young Earth creationism has little to no credibility and is pseudoscience. And I will argue that all day long. But this is not an attack on religion. As I mentioned,
And this is something that people don't really seem to kind of understand when something like this video comes up. When something like this comes up. This is something that people don't really grasp, because people identify as their religion. They identified it. It is one of the things that, you know, if you were to meet somebody for the first time, you know, it would be something that they would find out about you relatively quickly. He's not attacking religion here. He's attacking a belief set within it. Well, not within it. A belief set that is attached to a religion. Meaning, quite simply put, creationism, like, there it just
At the beginning of this video, it's very important for all of us watching this to understand that I am talking about a handful of discoveries and a very specific fringe group of religion, and not religion as a whole. In fact, Cuban wrote after the discovery, quote, "I am a Christian and believe in the Creator, but have not yet formed definite conclusions about some aspects of the origins controversy, such as the exact age of the Earth or the limits of biological change. I choose to publish my research in creation and evolution, not to attack creationism, but to help set the record straight on the true nature of the Paluxy evidence."
There we go.
End quote. This is a fantastic way to think. I have a lot of respect for someone who is able to look for the truth despite what they have been taught to believe, and to inform the way they think based on the research which they do. We live in a time where people no longer change their opinions based on facts. They change their facts based on their opinions. And young Earth creationism is something
people have been doing that for a very, very long time, though.
in which all of its evidence can be almost effortlessly debunked. But this is not an attack on belief. Each and every one of us can believe whatever we want.
Exactly.
And that is our truth. But in the words of everyone's favorite archaeologist, archaeology is the search for fact, not truth. If it's truth you're interested in, Dr. Tyree's philosophy class is right down the hall. Before I let you go, let's have a look at what we're going to talk about next week.
Okay.
Spin that wheel, Big Papa!
And see, this is something that people just don't understand when you talk about something like this. I have always sat there and looked at, religion as, and, Christianity as a whole. And I've never once sat there and seen any evidence for myself that would debunk it for myself. Like, that would take away from it and diminish what, Christianity as a whole. I've never seen anything as far as any kind of scientific theory or anything like that, that in my own eyes would do that. And some people might say, well, how can you possibly say that? For me, what I've read throughout the years and all the things that I've seen, I tend to look at things from a perspective that it's kind of difficult for me to really sit down and explain and make sense to pretty much anyone. It's difficult for me to sit down and explain my patterns of my thought processes and everything like that. But at the same time, I disagree with nothing that he said here. Nothing. Okay? And the reason being is because it's all backed up. You cannot simultaneously say the Earth is 6,000 years old and then say the dinosaurs were wiped out 65 million years ago. You can't do that. I knew people that were young. Well, I didn't know what they were called, but now that I've seen this, I've known people that were young Earth creationists. And for me, I just sit there and I sit back and like, okay, you believe that, I understand that, but it's for me, it's a thing where I have to sit back and like, okay, this would have to be the ultimate bag on head ever that this would be the way it is. Why would every bit of everything point in an opposite direction of what you're saying? Everything point in the opposite direction of what you're saying. And for the oh god, I'm having trouble trying to explain this, but I'm gonna knock it off. Anyhow, let's get back into this. You can believe whatever you want to believe. I'm a firm adherent to that. The only thing that I ask out of anybody is to not do what he was talking about here, which is making facts and warping them to suit your own narrative. I can't stand that. Or to take 9/10 of a fact and then ignore the last part that doesn't fit your narrative. I can't stand that either. But that's me. Let's go.
Oh, great. We're going to be talking about the Baghdad Battery's shitty little brother. And we also have to do the fan art section, because apparently I can get away with that now.
Nice!
This beautiful little caricature was made by Akari Kuzu, one of the people on my Discord. It's really impressive. You did a great job with my rings. I give it a 11.5 out of 10. Bam! My arm is definitely cut off when I go out here.
Yeah.
We also have this, which was done by another Discord user, Magical Seahorse, and it is a list of all of the countries and states that I have insulted in all of my videos ever, which is a unbelievable amount of dedication, and I'm really impressed.
Nice.
But I think I insulted a couple more in this one, so get on it. You're gonna need an updated version. If you were here for this premiere, it was wonderful having you, and if not, I look forward to seeing you live next week when I talk about the... Why did I say next week? I don't have a schedule for these videos. I look forward to seeing you next time when I talk about the Dendera.
And I have already seen that one, and it sent me into a deep spiral of depression that I have yet to come out from.
As always, I would like to thank my patrons for making this video possible. All of your names will be in the credits at the end, so stick around for that. And if you would like to see me on any other platforms, I am active on Instagram and less active on TikTok, but all of my social medias will be linked in my bio, and you can check me out there. Oh!
His up-to-date links are going to be in the description down below. This did come out some time ago.
And Discord. Discord is up now as well if you'd like to join that. It's a good time. We talk about stupid things, and every once in a while I pop in and give my 1 cent of advice and then don't go on for another 12 hours. Remember to stay curious, stay inquisitive, and most importantly, remember that 70% of all archaeology is done in the library.
Nice. Warpugs, believe whatever you want to believe. Just make sure that you're not being disingenuous with it. That is my only real recommendation to anybody. As long as you're not being disingenuous with yourself, then you're fine. Then you're fine. I have my own beliefs. I have held them for quite some time, and I don't see anything wrong with that. I really don't. And the sheer fact of the matter is, I don't think that you can sit there and, just to be honest with you, seeing these right here, this is the kind of stuff that actually does drive me nuts. And it's exactly the kind of thing that he was talking about when he was talking about people taking things and warping them to suit their own narrative. Seeing this right here, I did not think about a shoe, because if this was a shoe for somebody, my God, you have the widest foot on the planet. Okay, congratulations. Seeing these, on the other hand, well, finding out about this was actually kind of cool. I'm just saying. I didn't know how that was done at all, but it's not. This, however, Dinosaur Valley State Park, that is a place that I would love to actually visit. I only recently found out about this. I don't know how I didn't know this. How fascinated I was with dinosaurs as a kid, and how fascinated I've been with street in general. But there's so many places that I have seen. Like, I have actually been to Meteor Crater in Arizona, which, if you are passing through Arizona, I highly recommend that you go there and just take a look, because it will really, really screw up your whole day, realizing the stuff that could make a hole that size is floating around out there. It will, like, when you see it on pictures, it never does it justice. And that's why when I look at something like this, I just want to go there. Because pictures, while they do convey a lot, they never do the actual thing justice. I want to walk along those trails. I want to step next to one of these prints and know that I'm walking the same path as something that I've always thought about. I've always been fascinated by. And I tell you this, guys. I go back to this. I'm actually. So this is what I was talking about. This is what I have sitting up. I took this from a waterfall, and you can actually see the actual layers within this rock. I'm not even sure how this is supposed to be. I'm kind of hesitant to touch this part right here because this part is actually the loose part I was talking about. I could just pull off if I really wanted to, and you can see there is a gap forming. That gap right there is forming right along that sediment line right there. I don't know. I don't have the background or the expertise to look at this thing and tell you what some of these things are. But one day I want to find out. I want to know enough to be able to tell for certain. But I'll tell you this. Something like this, as simple as it is, as simple, this is, you probably have seen something like this in any number of travels that you have done. Any number of travels that you have done. At all. And you see stuff like this all the time, but you don't think about it. You just really just don't think about it. This here, these lines are from a time that is so far gone that I can't even really conceive it in terms of numbers. See, it's so soft, it literally is coming apart in my hands. It's so soft. This might look heavy. This is probably about 5 pounds. It's so soft. When I was holding it right here, a piece of it came off my hands. War pugs. This here that I hold in my hands is history. This is history. Line by line, you can actually see history. And one of these days, I actually hope to know which each one of these lines mean. But I don't think I ever will. And that makes me sad in some ways. It does make me sad in other ways. It does make me happy because there's always going to be a mystery. There's always going to be something that I don't know. And for me, I often claim that I am an idiot. I tell people I'm an idiot all the time, and people tell me no, that I'm not, and all this other kind of stuff. But stuff like this that makes me realize that, like this. Look at this. I mean, look at it. This might not mean anything to some of you. You might be thinking, why am I making such a big deal out of this? But the sheer fact of the matter is, and the reason I'm so, I call myself an idiot so often, is because I'm actually glad that there are mysteries that I will never be able to sit down and actually learn everything that I want. And you might be saying to yourself, why does that make sense? Because the sheer fact of the matter is, I don't want to live in a world where there are no mysteries left for me that I know. I just don't want that at all. War pugs, thank you so much for spending time with me. I know I rambled, I know I ranted and raved, but I appreciate you sitting through it if you're still here with me. And I just want you to know, I appreciate every single one. I appreciate every single one of you that's been with me on this journey so far, and I hope to see you along the way. If you will, just hit the like button. It helps me with my engagement. Leave a comment down below. It does much the same thing. It helps boost me up into the algorithm, everything like that. And guys, be happy that you don't have the answers for everything. Be happy that you just don't have the answers for everything that you want to know. Because the last thing, I think the worst possible fate would be, I keep on bringing up 40K, You know, I sometimes really I like to talk about one of the primaries in Perturabo. And one of the things that made Perturabo so bitter was the fact that he could look at any piece of architecture, anything period, automatically understand principles, design principles, design flaws, the mathematics behind everything. He automatically understood it. All the wonder was stolen from him. If I knew everything that I was looking at when I looked at this, it would make the world a far darker place. Guys, I will catch you next time. Join as a member of Patreon for early access, War Pugs. Go subscribe to mine, and I will catch you.